15. Okay, so thank you for joining. Today's session is called Going Down for the Third Time. A little background noise. All right, so why is it going down for the third time? Well, there's a whole lot of things that are tending down, and let's talk about it. The pandemic, you remember the pandemic, it's still out there, still going. Here are the numbers. We started the month of January this year at 312 million globally, and it's more than doubled so far this year. And we still got 2 more months to go. So we may think that the pandemic is over, but 320 million more people have been infected. Another million people, 1.1 million, have died this year. Here in the United States, the infection rate is continuing as well. We've got another 37 million people that have been infected this year. That's 37 million in 40, I believe it's 41 weeks, something like that. So that's a pretty significant number. 1.1 million have died. The death rate is down. Considering we had 841 at the beginning of 841,000 at the beginning of the year, and we're at 1.1 now. We've only seen 270,000 more people die, and we'll talk about that again in a minute. I just wanted to cap the numbers. 7.1 million infections reported in Mexico with 330,000 deaths. But what we see is new cases are going back up. Seasonally, if you look back, 2020, we found out about the virus, and it came along, and when we hit the winter of 2020, the numbers went way up, dropped off again, and during the spring and summer of 2021, and then over the winter, the numbers went back up, and now in 2022, they're expecting the same thing. Probably not quite as bad as they were in previous years, but still enough to impact us. There are some other things, though, that are coming our way, because COVID is killing 357 Americans every day. A lot of them are here in Texas. But we have the flu season starting as well. And we see that there are rising rates of just the regular flu. Not COVID is one thing, flu is a different thing. And then the third thing in the triple threat this year is the RSV. It's respiratory syncytial virus. It's just easier to say RSV. And this is a virus that's been with us for a long time. And normally it just affects smaller children, and they get a flu-like symptom, and it's over in a couple of days. But because we've been kids have been out of their normal flow. They've not been dealing with other children a lot, and their normal activities have been altered. They believe that because of that, their resistance to this virus has dropped somewhat. And so this year it's having a much harder impact. The ERs around the country are filling up quickly. And so it's impacting a lot of people. Here in El Paso, it hasn't gotten quite as bad. The numbers last night were the ERs for pediatric care were only at about 55% of patients. but in some places they're well over 100%, and they're flooding the ERs for the adults as well, getting them in. This also transfers to older adults, and they're seeing more incidents in older adults of this RSV as well. So we look at that and we say, okay, so what are we doing about this? Well, here in the US, there's a third booster for COVID. Less than 8% of the population that should be getting it have gotten it. But then if you look at the second booster, only about 15% of the people that should have gotten it got it. So there are some people that haven't gotten the shots, that haven't gotten boosters, and we'll see. Depends on how bad the season is. The new flu shots for this year's flu are out, and less than 8% have gotten it. Now, I've gotten my booster, but I haven't gotten my flu shot because I get my flu shot in November, and you're supposed to keep them a year apart. So I will get my flu shot next week or the week after. RSV doesn't have a shot. It doesn't have any sort of antibodies. We treat it like the common cold. You wash your hands, you use hand sanitizer, and if you're sick with it, you make sure you stay hydrated. Chicken soup is always good. It adds a little salt to your system, and it tastes pretty good. So chicken soup is on the table for you if you feel you've got it. I thought what I would do this morning or this afternoon is I'd look at some of the things that we looked at the last time we met. And one of them was we were talking about the dwell time on the West Coast. And it's down. It was between 8 and 9 days when we met back in July. Yeah, that was the last time we had this meeting. And it's down to 1 to 2 days now. And that's the dwell time, waiting at the dock. The ports have cleared most of their backlogs, and the shipments for China are down about 20% of what they were in July. Really? Yeah, really. And they're 30% below where they were in September of 2020. So here's what it looks like. This is a graph of TEUs received in Long Beach. And you can see it starts with 2016 on the right hand, and then it went up in 2017, down a little in 2018, 2019. In 2020, it went up from about 360,000 up to 420,000. Then in 2021, it fell back to about 370,000, and now it's down to about just under 350,000. So we're seeing a fairly significant drop in the amount of material coming into Long Beach. LA is the same thing. And what we're seeing is a slowdown of ships and shipments worldwide. Now, that doesn't mean they've stopped. It isn't like nobody's moving and there's no freight moving. Actually, the freight has pretty much been delivered. And now we're getting back to the normal values. If you look back at 2018, 2017, they were higher than the count here in 2022. So we're a little below that, but we're above 2016. So we're still doing good business. It's just in a much more manageable range. So how did this happen? How did we get here? Well, you remember the bullwhip effect, where we said, the small movement of one end of the whip makes big movement at the other end of the whip. And if it's a small shift in demand, you have a bigger impact on manufacturing. We had all of the manufacturing going back to 2018 and 2019 pre-pandemic. And then in 2020, we had the pandemic. We were still producing at the same rates. And it took a while before we started to taper off. We were buying a lot of things, but we weren't keeping pace in the purchasing. We weren't buying out. So what happened was we had the backlog, we had the containers, and we had container shortages because we were using them as temporary warehouses. And that was utilizing containers. We've all probably experienced having our container warehouses, like our trailer warehouses, and we use them as temporary warehouses. The demurrage isn't that much, and it's just easier leaving the stuff in there and take it out when we need it. Well, this year, the retailers decided they weren't going to order a whole bunch from China. They were going to unload all of those containers that have been sitting in the backyard, and they're going to fill the shelves this Christmas season with all of the material that they bought last year that didn't make it onto the shelves last year. So what does that mean? That means that the demand on the factories is slowing. We're burning off inventory. And as we burn off inventory, that means that companies will have more cash and they'll have to decide what they're going to do with it. But it's going to release a whole bunch of empty containers. So we're going to have a lot of trains moving empty containers around the country, trying to get them to ports so that they can be moved back to wherever they're going to be filled again. It would be nice to think that we were going to fill them with products and ship full containers out and get full containers back. And to a degree, we're doing that. We're coming closer and closer to the balance of trade. We've been importing much more than we've been exporting, but recently those numbers have started to shift as well, and we're getting closer and closer to being in trade balance. So while here at home, all of that's been going on around us, but the fuel costs are dropping, rising sharply. And I'm not talking necessarily about gasoline, but diesel. Diesel has been difficult to get from time to time, and the prices have gone up and down like a yo-yo. This week, they've had shortages of diesel along the eastern seaboard, all the way down to the Arkansas, Georgia area. Trucks have been running short on diesel. They've been, getting off highways, going to find farmers' exchanges and things like that where they have diesel for farm equipment. But the truckers have been going there because the truck stops and stuff have been reporting out of fuel. Now, some of that has to do with issues with the refineries not refining the diesel or not refining enough diesel because there are other products that are getting higher profit. But some of it is the diesel is being replaced right now with the refineries switching over and running heating oil and getting the heating oil in place for the winter. So, and normally when that happens, the refineries in the South continue to make diesel and they move the diesel up to the north. That part of that supply chain has not worked well. So they're having issues getting fuel and getting where they need to go. But the whole use of truckers across the country has continued to fall. Loads, there are fewer and fewer loads. Competitive bids right now are at or below cost of operation. The big truck companies can afford to do that. They've got some money in the bank, but the owner operators are being starved, and a lot of them are parking their rigs or they're going out of business. One of the larger failure rates in business right now is with trucking companies. It was during the pandemic, trucking was at a premium. They were making a lot of money. Now we're out of that pandemic mode. The loads are dropping and the costs are dropping with them, and companies just can't continue. So they're going out of business. And that's, that's a cautionary note. If you're hiring transportation now, if you're paying for transportation, make sure that you're with somebody that's going to be around. They're going to be able to make the final trip. You don't want them to get halfway there and then the driver gets a call that says park your truck and find a way home because we're not paying you. And that has happened in the past, probably going to happen this time around as well. Ongoing, the longshoremen and ports are still negotiating a new contract. You remember the president signed an emergency order 3 months ago to keep the rail workers from going out on strike. They're not out on strike, they're still working, but the negotiations are ongoing. So both the longshoremen and ports and the rail unions, that all is still ongoing. It hasn't been resolved yet. What's the holdup? It's the typical negotiation. These contracts often take 6 months to a year to get done. And this one's going away. Most of them have gone in the past. And workers work without a contract, or they use the old contract. They get some wage dividends built into that, and so they make a little bit more money. But the benefit packages and the other changes that they're looking for won't be done until the contracts are ratified. And remember, we were talking about baby formula. Raise your hand if you've heard anything about this recently. But here's the truth: Abbott Labs has not reopened yet. That's where we were in July. In fact, they've recalled more lots of product, and the shortage continues. And that's the case. Formula is still being flown in from Switzerland, Great Britain, and Spain. There's still a shortage. But the new change is Abbott has said that they're not Governor Abbott, Abbott Labs. Sorry, I need to be a little bit more compartmentalized in my naming. Abbott Labs has said that they feel that the factory that had the failure up in Michigan isn't able to fix the problems to the point that they can consistently make good product. So they're going to make a new factory. They're going to build a new factory. And so then the question is, how long will that take? Now, you have to understand that the baby formula in question here is a very specific baby formula for premature babies and babies with special conditions, special health conditions. And so it's really tentative. They have to have that formula or they dehydrate. They can't digest the others. And so this is an essential. The question that sort of runs through my brain and the brains of others is, why don't we create a generic for this and let all of the other formula making companies make the formula and put it on the shelf? Certainly it's got to be cheaper than building a new factory and going through, because it will probably take a year to build a factory, reasonable, maybe a little bit less than that. But then you also have to get it clean. You have to get it approved. Then you have to get approval from the FDA to make this product there. And then once you started making the product, you have to prove that it has been done correctly and meets all of the specifications and all of that. That doesn't happen at snap of the fingers or drop of the hat, that takes a lot longer. So we're looking out another 2 years maybe before Abbott Labs is back making this particular type of baby formula. So there's still going to be some shortages, and we'll still be flying formula in from around the world to meet the needs. Shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to give you something because we're sitting here at the end of October. October's finishing up. November, you've already finished your plans for it, probably plans for December as well. And you're looking at 2023 and saying, okay, what's our S&OP going to look like, and what do we need to consider as we look at the 2023 S&OP? The outside pressures that are going to be on our business, regardless of our business, the pressures that are going to be on us are inflation, the rising cost of everything around us. And we could get into a long conversation of gouging and all of that. But it's here and it's going to continue for a while. There's going to be tight money. Money has been floating around. We had all of the different payouts that the government made, and then there were other things that happened. And so there was a lot of money floating around, and that money is tightening up. Getting loans, that kind of thing, there's still money and you can still get the loan, but the rules are changing a little bit and it's getting tighter and tighter. And we're seeing the trucking companies and we're seeing other business failures happening around the country. And when that happens, then the lenders start to get a little more difficult in terms of giving loans. We're looking at the potential for a recession. If we have one, what's that going to do to your business? Are you recession proof? Are you tied to things that if the recession hits, you can close the door and it's worse than a pandemic? So how's that going to impact you? There are war worries. The Russia-Ukraine thing continues and continues to get worse every day as Russia decides that they're not going to win, so they're going to make sure that everybody loses. It's like going into a negotiation and you say, well, we could go in and get a win-win, but I just want to make sure that I win. I'm not too worried about them. And so then it becomes a win-lose, and then it becomes a lose-lose. And I'm thinking that's where we're going. What's going to happen? Who else is going to get involved? What other things are going to happen around the world? In World War I, it was a guy in Bulgaria who shot another guy, and that's what triggered World War I. In World War II, there were a whole lot of things going on before we got involved. But it was somebody deciding to take an action, and the reaction was a world war. Is that going to happen here? Don't know. But that's a worry, and businesses worry, and when businesses worry, they tend to tighten up. And there are global trade tensions that come out of this. China is pushing, they want to be the #1 top alpha dog in the world. The US is still the top alpha dog in the world. I was in a meeting in 1998, and the forecast was that China's economy would be greater than our economy in 5 years. We are now 24, almost 25 years away from that, and China is still trying to make their economy bigger than our economy. And they've got some real problems, and that's what's creating the trade tensions. They've got problems. Russia's got problems. The EU has problems. Great Britain has. They've had some issues. They're having their third prime minister in 8 weeks. So they've got their issues as well. And so all of this comes together and it's creating some trade tension around the world. So how does that impact your business? Are you making and shipping somewhere else in the world? Are you dependent on international sales, or are international sales an afterthought in your company and you're focused just selling in North America. And even at that, what's going on with our partners. So we've got that going on. Forecasts. You probably have forecasts that you're looking at. And so the question is, where did they come from? Put on your skeptical spectacles. I love that phrase, so I threw it in here. And then I said, I won't mess this up when I do the presentation. I just messed it up. Skeptical spectacles. In other words, don't believe what you read in your forecast. Where's the forecast coming from? Is it internal? Is it external? What numbers and conditions are included and what's being left out? And is it raw data coming from our customers? Is it internal forecast for planning? What are the conditions around this forecast? Because we don't want to run to forecast if we know the forecast is way wrong. We know forecast is going to be wrong. How much is it going to be wrong? It's plus or minus 5%, plus or minus 10%. Okay, we can live with that. But what if it's way wrong? And we don't know that unless we're skeptical and find out what the sources are and then validate that. Then as we finish looking at the forecasts, then we need to look at the goals. What are the year-end goals for 2023? Where do you need to be? Where are you today? And where are you going to be in December of 2023 in terms of sales, in terms of service levels, inventory, and costs? Get your goals and make sure you have those. You probably do. They're probably out there already, but just make sure you've got them and you're baking them into your plans. And then are they broken out by quarter? Can you get those things broken out by quarter so that you know what your sales are going to be first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, rather than just sales for the year, one big number? If you can't get them broken out by quarter, look at your history and say, okay, we're going to be reasonably close to this. How does this break? And just sort of break it out yourselves. And start thinking about hedges. Not the bushes that grow around your house, but where can you hide inventory? Where can you build a little inventory? Where can you keep some excess labor so that you can pick up? Do you have suppliers that you can draw from so that you can continue to work or work faster than you had planned? And if you have to slow down, how can you do that? Can you smooth that by filling some voids in your inventory, working with your suppliers to see what they can do? But start thinking about that, because you may need to do a lot of hedging in the coming year. And then plan your production by quarter. Take your sales number, put it out there. You know, you can do this in Excel. You can, if you got it on your system. Go that way, but if you don't, you can do this in Excel. Put your sales out there, and then keep your inventory neutral, so that your inventory goal at the end of the year, your inventory goal at the beginning of the year, just keep, flatten that line out and just keep that in neutral for the time being, and then graph your data points so that you can see inventory would be flat and your sales are up and down. And then match your sales with production so that it goes up and down. And then seek input to model the inventory goals, leaving production alone. So now what we want to do is say, what do we need to do to inventory to meet the inventory goal? Do we need to reduce inventory, raise inventory? How do we want to do that? And so we can crank that into our basic spreadsheet model here and not touch production. And then we can see where we have opportunities. Where can we add inventory? Where can we reduce inventory? What are the times? What are the hedges that we can build into our plan? And then if the demand plan changes, where can you change your plan? So find your opportunities for hedging up and down, and then look at it. And how does it look? And does it make sense? You look at the spreadsheet and you go, okay, I could put this up a little, I can bring this down a little, I can do this, I can do that. That's modeling. Do your modeling. And when it makes sense to you, then you understand where you can make changes, save the file and copy it to a new file. And now break it down by product family. Do the same thing, but do it with families and then model the families. Does it make sense? And if it does, save that file and then add it into the S&OP, because that becomes your plan for the year. And you put it into the S&OP and it rides, and you adjust it as the year goes along. We got some new ideas and some new issues coming to us here for October. As we go into the November meeting, I will take some of these and make them part of the program for next month. Thank you so much for giving me this information and helping me understand what you want to talk about. And we'll get together a month from now, give or take, depending on holidays, it may be 3 weeks. If you have any other ideas, feel free to send them to either me or to Deanna, and we'll try and bake them into our next presentation. Thanks so much and have a great week.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Chet. Nice talking to you.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chester.
Thank you, Oscar. I'm going to get out of here.
Thank you.